Writing a good story is hard. Making a good movie is hard. Transforming one into the other is even harder. Welcome to Adaptive Difficulty. This is a show where a couple of book lovers take on the challenge of adaptations. I'm Cameron, and with my friend Josh, we explore the difficult and sometimes bizarre choices that happen in the course of making an adaptation. This week, we are exploring the 1985 film Clue, based on the 1943 board game Clue. That's right, it's a weird one.
Hello, I'm Josh.
And I'm Cameron. I will say, just for everyone, that we had a brief discussion about how we think that this might be an interesting episode, just in general. We are kind of stepping away from kind of our usual mode of looking at written work and how it translates into film. Now we're stretching our wings and flying all the way over to board games.
Yeah, this should be, if we're keeping up with our own schedule, releasing around, I think, the week before Thanksgiving. So we thought it would be fun to do a board game so you can, play it with your family at Thanksgiving.
Well, okay, the first step, you should play the board game, then show them the podcast episode, then show them the movie, and then show them the podcast episode again. Because I think how you should.
Why?
I just did A, for the double listen, B, because, we're going to spend the first half of it talking about the board game, or at least the first little bit of it talking about the board game. So.
Yeah. So I guess, like we normally do, let's start with our prior experience with Clue. So where did we come from in terms of Clue?
Okay. So I will confess that my family's not a very big board game family. We did play board games occasionally. It was usually a version of SpongeBob Monopoly, because that was what I really liked as a kid.
Did you own more than one version of SpongeBob Monopoly?
No, I think there's only one version of SpongeBob Monopoly.
Okay, you said it was a version of SpongeBob Monopoly, so I just made
my mistake. It's the version of SpongeBob Monopoly. Got to get the definitive article.
Got to hit that yeah.
We occasionally played like Trouble or Sorry, but Clue was never really a board game that we played as a family. Like, I played it with friends, but it was never one that I played on a regular basis.
Okay. So as you kind of already know, Cameron, my life was the opposite of that.
That's an understatement.
I'm very into board games now, and normally ones that are more obscure than Clue, but that did not start until maybe around high school. Before that, my family was still really into board games, but we played more of the traditional ones, so that included Clue. I remember actually getting my copy of Clue at the Christmas Eve party on one side of my family. The adults would play Dirty Santa, and then the kids would just get a cheap gift from their parents to satiate them, not being able to play Dirty Santa. So I remember getting my copy of Clue from that, and we played it quite a bit.
Do you like Clue?
I liked it as a kid. I think it's hobby board gamers, as they call themselves now, in which I would talk about mass market board games as being junk, usually like Monopoly, Trouble, Clue, Sorry, and so on. But I think this is kind of a common opinion, Clue is the least bad of the lot. It still has some things that are annoying, like the fact that you have to roll dice to move, and sometimes you just waste your turn because you rolled a 3 and you can't get to a different room on the board. But the fact that you actually have to do some detective work, it's actually kind of clever. So I think it's fine. I enjoyed myself playing it for this episode.
See, I just don't like Clue, is what I think it is. The board game I find boring. And I usually like mysteries in video games and board games, like trying to figure things out. I just something about Clue.
But do you like deduction? Because I feel like Clue as a board game is less similar to like trying to solve the mystery in a book, and it's more like Sudoku, just with other players.
But I like Sudoku, but I don't like Clue.
That's interesting.
I just feel like there's no like emotional weight to what you do in Clue. Whereas like with games like Sorry and dare I say it, Monopoly, which I find is funny because no one actually plays Monopoly the way it's supposed to be played. But there's like...
But even if you play it the right way, I get what you're saying. Like, there's ups and downs and, like, major turns of fortune.
Well, I also think that it kind of stands like... You have no way of comparing yourself, like, where you are in the game with other players when you're playing Clue. Because you have no idea where you are. Or, I mean, you have some idea where you are, but you have no idea where the other players are in their deductions.
Yeah, but I feel like that happens at the end because someone solves it and then you all are, like, grown and you're like... I knew the person and the weapon. I just needed the room still, and you all compare notes at the end.
Yeah, but I still feel like that leads you to kind of a rather emotionally neutral kind of gaming experience. Where, like, you don't have... There's no sense of tension.
Yeah. I guess I feel like it's one... You're just trying to, like, subtly... be more clever than the other players, which is also, I guess, the experience that a lot of like modern board games that people would say are good is trying to provide. So maybe that's why people, like me are biased towards it, but also why it might leave people cold.
Yeah, of the few board games that, I did not like that we played, I feel like the more subtle ones are the ones I didn't like.
Right. And I like some of the more up and down ones too, and random, but yeah.
I was thinking back to, what was it, Marketplace of Raw or whatever? That game was bad.
Oh, it's just called Raw, and it's considered like a modern classic. It's like the Pride and Prejudice of board games.
No. Maybe I have to try it again when it's not like a Friday evening in college, but it was not the move that night.
Yeah, I might have misread the room. Did you manage to play it for this episode, or are you just going off memory of it?
So I did not get a chance to play it, but what I did do is I did go onto YouTube and watch several different YouTubers play it, several rounds.
Okay. Well, that's basically right. Did you have any takeaways unique to that experience instead of just like your general memory and vibe of it?
I was definitely confirmed the idea that when they don't exactly know how the game works and they're just trying to like blindly guess, it's very frustrating to watch.
Yeah, and Clue is not that complicated, so that would probably frustrate me.
But I just kind of really confirms to me that like watching them play it, like there's not a lot that I feel like happens in Clue. Like,
yeah, I did notice a couple things this time for myself. Like, there's a lot more like weaponization of the movement system, at least inherent in the rules, than I remembered. Because as a kid, we basically just, did our own thing. We would move to a room and accuse someone if we thought we needed the information. But if you're really trying to spite someone, you can move their figure, willy-nilly to rooms they don't want to be in. You can kind of weaponize that rule, and it's clearly intentional in the rules that you can do that. And then the other thing is, and this didn't come up, I did manage to play it with my family. We played twice in a row because it didn't take very long. You can block the doors. That didn't come up, but it is specifically stated in the rules as a possibility. So that was kind of the takeaway. Like, I didn't remember this being an element of the game, but it really is a key part of it. And that might be if people aren't taking advantage of that, because that's really where the wild swings of fate come in, is like being able to move where you want, then that might be part of where it ends up cold.
Yeah, I can see that because of the ones that I watched, I would not describe any of them as like particularly skilled. Like, I'd even just go as far as say board gamers, but just like none of them were great at Clue. So like, I felt like there wasn't a lot of like strategizing that could go on in their heads. And of course, they're all talking to each other, so they can't really like convey that to the audience in a way.
Right. Well, I remember like as a kid, I would just see the card when it was my turn, to guess, and then mark it off. And I remember it like specifically the time that I played, and it like clicked in my brain like, oh, I can learn information about the game on other people's turns and get more information than I would otherwise have by paying attention to them. Like when I was 8, the idea just never occurred to me.
Yeah, I don't think I ever played this game until after middle school. So I guess.
Okay, so your neurons had clicked into place.
Yes.
Mine had not.
I mean, I'm not going to say that I was a super intelligent deductive reasoner, but.
And then there's also like the element of when people ask you for your card, what do you show them? What information do you give them? Which it's not that hard of a decision, but it is another wrinkle that does make it a little more complex. Like, probably it's best to show them the room because those are the hardest to get to and there's the most of them. And I would like keep my hand in order so that, if somebody needed a card from me twice, I would show them the first card in my hand that matched their question and make sure that I wasn't like showing them more information than I had to. I'm trying to say it quickly so I don't waste too much time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rules and the mechanics of the game like work on a very functional level in a way that like something like Monopoly doesn't, because no one ever uses Monopoly rules.
Yeah.
It's just
the Monopoly rules function. They just very quickly lead to a runaway leader and then the game ends, which people don't like. They want it to be an activity where they can hang out and sit around. But the design was originally, it was called the Landlord's Game, and it was to prove why capitalism was flawed. So that was the point. But
so both of your games were fairly short, because the ones that I watched were also fairly short. They were less than like 20 minutes apiece. So
the first one was especially short because my mom's first turn, no one had anything she called for except for one, I think, or maybe nothing that she called for, but she happened to have one in hand. So she didn't definitely know the answer, but she was very close starting with the first turn. And of course, everyone else took note of it too. So we were also pretty close to getting it right. And she ended up winning within a couple turns. The second time was a little more complex and the game lasted slightly longer, but we probably still finished both within the hour. My mom won again, but not because she had such a lucky turn. So yeah, they weren't too long.
Because I'm just thinking of it in the context of like Monopoly takes forever, Sorry's barely a game, Trouble is the best game.
Well, Sorry and Trouble are basically the same game. They're Parcheesi.
Yeah, but I only go by the Hasbro naming convention because I grew up in a capitalist system.
I'm trying to think if I have any other thoughts on Clue just as a general concept.
What do you think of
game?
The character designs?
Well, one thing I've realized playing it and looking at different copies of it for this is that they vary a lot. So my version is from the mid-2000s, the one that I have at my parents' house and that we played. And each figure is a little miniature that's been painted. And like Colonel Mustard is a hunter, and Miss Peacock is wearing like a big peacock dress, and Miss Scarlet's in like a very skimpy red dress, and Professor Plum obviously is like a redheaded professor. Miss White is a maid, an old maid. And who's the other person I'm missing? Mr. Green is a pastor or a reverend. He's Reverend Green. Which I guess the main notable thing is that they're all white in my version. They used to all be pawns, and I guess there was less details about them. There were like character biographies in my copy. But my wife Rachel has a copy that she keeps at school since she's a teacher for her kids to play sometimes. And they replaced Miss White with Dr. Orchid, which is a pink pawn, and it's an Asian woman.
Mm.
And then I was at Big Lots earlier today and saw a copy of Clue. And Professor Plum is a black man. Mr. Green is like an Asian mayor. I think he's Mayor Green now, and he's Asian American. Miss White is back, but she is a chef. She's Chef White. Dr. Orchid is gone again. I think Miss Scarlet is still basically Miss Scarlet.
Well, you can't change that. That's like the whole appeal of the game.
Miss Peacock looks like a dead ringer for Kamala Harris and is Solicitor Peacock now.
You think that that's intentional? You think they brewed that up in 2021?
It almost was too... like, it was uncanny. Like, Solicitor Peacock is maybe a little more ambiguously white than Kamala Harris. Like, she just kind of had a dark skin tone. But the fact that she has a political job and was wearing a pantsuit and had the same haircut, it was pretty uncanny.
Interesting.
So that is all to say that the characters change a lot.
I wonder what the idea behind that is, because most other games don't really change their pieces all that often.
Well, they keep the pawns for the most part. I think they only had the minis the brief period where I happened to get my copy as a kid. Otherwise, I think they probably just realized all the characters were white and wanted to correct that. Did you know that in Britain it's called Cluedo?
Yes, and I think that Clue is a better name.
Yeah. Cluedo is clever because Ludo is the name of a game, which is kind of like Parcheesi, like we were talking about. So like Clue, Ludo, but it loses the elegance of just calling the game Clue.
I thought it was interesting. This can be our segue into the actual movie itself, but how intentional they are that this is an American setting, and the fact that it's called Clue as opposed to Cluedo.
Okay, well, before we go into the movie itself, I do have one thing to read to you.
Oh.
This is pulled from the Steam reviews for the digital adaptation of the board game. So keep in mind as I read this, the game you would be buying for $15 if not on sale, just allows you to play the board game Clue on your computer. Ideology, the stupidity of ideology. Ideology is the antipode of theory, and unfortunately too many people in the West today do not understand this. Unfortunately for this game, these devs are also victims of the evil ideology that is currently rotting the West. Rather than respecting the original Cluedo characters and offering DLC to get different characters, they immediately impose their bleeped ideology on us. This submission to tyranny is the only downside compared to the previous game. The review was overall a thumbs up.
I mean, in that case, I don't believe this is a genuine review.
Well, they were like, I can't complain because it lets you play Clue by the rules, which is all I can ask for. But they put a woman in it, so they just had to mention that part.
Oh, internet reviews.
Anyway, moving on. You were saying Oh, it's very American, the movie.
Yeah, like, I mean, the whole running series throughout it is that they constantly reference the American government and everything. So it's like clearly set in America. And I wonder if that was done on purpose because they call it Clue. And so they wanted to really kind of emphasize that this is the American version.
I'm not sure. To me, I guess it didn't register that it was American, other than, yeah, I mean, for the obvious reason you're saying. I think they needed a reason all of these people could be blackmailed, and they happened to be producing the movie in America. That's not to like. I mean, in the conversation,
I'm not like attached to that thought process. That was just one of the notes that I had, kind of about midway through the film for me. But
yeah,
what is your experience?
And I mean, but
no,
what was my experience? What
you ask her? You continue on first.
I don't even remember what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. I was just going to ask you what your experience with this film is. Have you seen it before? I mean, I assume you have.
I saw it when it was on Netflix, like probably sometime in middle school, and hadn't since then.
What was your middle school experience with it?
I didn't have a strong memory of it, other than there's definitely more. By more, I mean almost all of the jokes are sex related than I thought. Like, I didn't have that memory of it, seeing it last time I saw it.
Because I think I watched it like 2 years ago or something like that. And it's mostly how I remember it being.
Yeah.
Although I feel like I had this impressive idea where I think the movie is very funny. And then when I go to watch it, I still find it humorous, but never in a way that's more like, let me exhale my air through my nose. Kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a very clever, rather than laugh out loud, sense of humor, I think. And I think the movie was initially a flop and kind of became a cult classic on home video, which I feel like is kind of the standard. Like, comedies that become cult classics tend to be more clever than they are broadly laugh out loud funny.
Mm-hmm. Well, I noticed that, like, most of the humor is based on, like, wordplay in this movie.
Yeah. There's a lot of wordplay, and there's also a lot of, like, I feel like there were a lot of, like, sustained shots where you're almost like, why aren't they moving on with it? And then something just, like, a tad funny happens in frame before they cut, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of when they draw lots at one point, like, where they've like made the sticks different sizes and they're drawing them. They show you every single second of that process, and it's not super funny throughout, but you see like the men comparing the lots they've drawn, which is obviously kind of a like manhood dick joke thing, and the characters like roll their eyes at who they get matched with and stuff, and it's this stuff that is not this huge punchline moment, but just kind of the moment to moment is amusing, and they carry that throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, like I don't think there's really like like a period of time where there's like nothing going on that's like humorous at any point in the film. Like I feel like there's always at least some small thing.
Yeah. I think every now and then there's like a monologue to set up the murder mystery that isn't like super funny, but it's not like you notice because you still also have the plot of the movie, which has to be explained. But what were we saying? That it's not laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, well, it's almost that like none of the characters have like super large reactions for the most part. Like, I mean, when the murder happens, they do, but like to pretty much everything else, they're very like, well, that's just another thing.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the most like famous scenes now from this is when Miss White is like, she's like curling her hands and she's like, there were like flames on the side of my face.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's so well known because it's the most like emphasized line in almost the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's the most, like, broadly performed.
Because, like, the only other kind of intense moments are, like, intense screaming. But, like...
Anytime they turn off the lights, there's, like, a lot going on.
Yeah. But it's very low energy throughout the entire thing for the most part.
I mean, they run around all over the place. But I almost... Kind of my thought when I ended it was that it almost has, like... I don't know if this makes any sense to you, like the Muppets show sense of humor.
You'll have to talk about that, because I've only ever seen the Muppets, like, 3 or 4 times. I've seen the Muppets A Christmas Carol, like, twice when I was younger.
Well, I've been watching off and on the original Muppet Show, which was just a variety show, which were super trendy at the time, except they used puppets. And I read some, like, I think I read the Wikipedia page, and, like, some early reviews were like, yeah, it's funny, but you can feel the show and the viewers thinking, like, well, really sophisticated people think this is funny. You know, I'm part of the elite counterculture or whatever, like hippies would think it was funny or whatever. And I think it's funny, so I guess I'm part of them, but it almost gave me that sense, like Clue, the movie, is funny for people that think they're very clever and don't find Adam Sandler funny or whatever.
Yeah, I can see that. I just think of the big, like, Reddit meme post where they're like, you have to have a really big brain to enjoy Rick and Morty.
I don't think it's that bad. I like the movie, and I think the movie's funny, because, again, I am one of these people sometimes, but...
An elitist snob.
Some movies are like that, or some comedies are like that, and some aren't, and both can be funny.
I don't really watch a lot of comedies in my spare time.
I watch them more on TV, I guess, than I do as movies. I feel like most of my notes are just, like, jokes I noticed. So if you have anything more important than that.
See. I mean, we can start at the very beginning with the whole stepping in poop joke. That's a pretty funny joke, I thought. Just kind of how it keeps playing out, where everyone thinks they stepped in it for, like, 5 minutes.
I don't even recall this joke, so I guess it didn't land with me.
Well, so, like, Wadsworth was throwing the bones to the dog, and he ties him up.
I remember that.
He's like, I got one over on you. And then as he's about to open the door, he kind of looks at his shoe and then looks at the dogs and looks kind of upset. So it's implied that he, like, stepped in poop. And then he kind of goes throughout. And every time he invites someone into the house and he's, like, taking their coat or whatever, they, like, get this... They can clearly smell it, and they're, like, looking around, and they look on the bottom of their shoes to see if they stepped in it. And they just, like... It's just kind of a small kind of joke.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Well, we gotta go back and watch it again.
To go backwards, because we normally cover what we would expect or how, like, what would be important in the adaptation after we read it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really cover that with the board game itself. But I did come up with those thoughts for it after I played it, which is, I think the important thing is, I think the most characteristic element is the manor itself that you have to get, because running place to place is, like, the key of the game. And I feel like so many of the types of rooms in the house, like Clue, the board game, was my first exposure to the idea of even having, you know, a billiard room or a conservatory or a library in your house. So that would be what I think is key to get right when you make a movie of it. I also thought the fact that you can be the murderer and not know it, I would be very convinced I had to include that element if I were making a movie. but I don't know how you would accomplish that.
Well, I kind of stuck mainly with like the first part because as I was watching the film, I was just kind of always enjoying kind of looking around the room and seeing how how much character there were in each of the rooms.
Yeah, they really decorated it a lot, and they did end up going to every room in the board game, I think.
Mm-hmm. And
they have the correct secret passages.
I was very happy that they decided to use all the different murder weapons throughout the whole film. Like, it would have been very sad if it was just one.
Yeah, well, not just use them, but I thought it was really funny when they have this scene that, like, is super dramatic, where they, like, slowly unwrap each murder weapon that is in the board game.
Yeah. I took note of who got which one. I couldn't figure out if there was kind of a meaning behind which one they got, but I didn't really see kind of a interesting thing to look at. Although,
yeah, I don't know that there was, because the person who ends up using each one, depending on the ending, is different. So I don't know which one you got initially. I don't know that.
Well, the reason I started taking notes of it, because I paused the film when this happened, was that Miss Scarlet pulled out a candlestick, and I was immediately like, okay, it's a phallus of some kind. Do the other ones play kind of also on that? But the other ones, I didn't really get kind of a clear vibe on any of them.
They're all phalluses, if you think about it.
The noose is very much a yonic expression.
Okay, well, but like the lead pipe is a phallus. Mm-hmm. And who gets that one?
Mr. Green, the pretend homosexual. Mustard gets the wrench. Plum gets the gun. Miss White get a noose. That kind of yonic
Which
imagery,
is yonic.
Which, makes sense considering she's like our Black Widow character. And Miss Peacock, whose name is now takes on a double meaning now that she has the dagger, which is also a phallus.
Yeah, so...
That's why I said I started looking for it, but I couldn't find anything with it, so...
Yeah, I don't know that. I think they needed to include all the weapons and had 6 characters.
Maybe that's what it is. I was just trying to see if there's anything more to it.
Right.
What did you think of them, like, revealing all of their blackmail-esque behavior? Like that scene, I suppose.
I thought it was fine. I don't have anything to say, I guess. What are you going to say?
Oh, I just was mainly thinking about Mr. Green and how he's like, that's it, guys, I'll say it. I'm a homosexual and I work for the government. It's like
I took a note of that. I didn't really... I mean, it's, at the time, accurate, so...
It's just weird to kind of see, like, nowadays, having someone come out, even though there's issues with that definition in this movie, considering he's not actually, but...
Well, this is a good time to bring it up. Did you watch a version that includes all 3 endings, one after the other?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess you streamed it, I guess?
Yes.
Okay, because I got the Blu-ray from my library, and it had 2 options. You could watch it the way it would have been seen in theaters, which is basically there's 3 endings to the movie, and you get a random ending, and that's just the movie. Or you can watch it in what it called the home media way, which is it plays each ending one after the other, and then there's an official ending, I think, is the third one that plays, at least according to the DVDs. I basically was like, well, when I watched it in middle school, I saw it on Netflix, so I saw all 3 endings. What would it be like to see it with just one ending? And that's how I watched it. And then I went back and watched the other 2 endings of my own volition. But I watched it just straight through with a single ending the first time. And I got the Miss Peacock ending, where she was the one who did it all.
See, I guess we can talk about this. I mean, I think it's pretty genius as like a filmmaker kind of decision to film 3 separate endings, considering that's like how the board game ends, that it ends differently each time, and then kind of just put it out in the world and have them kind of sort it out themselves, because I can imagine two people going to see it in two different theaters and then coming to talk about it and then getting into a fist fight.
Well, the reason I brought it up now is because you end up in a very weird situation where sometimes when you watch this movie, it's canon that Mr. Green is gay, and sometimes when you watch this movie, it's not.
Yeah. What?
So I don't know what to do with that, but it's kind of funny that it's possible.
Well, I don't know. So you got the Peacock ending. Which one did you prefer, I suppose?
If I had to make one the official ending, and I can't remember which one the movie, like when you watch it on Netflix, I can't remember which one they do this with, but I would choose the one where they all committed one of the murders.
That's the canon ending where Mr. Green is not a homosexual. So thank you for burying your gays.
Well, I just feel like it's the most narratively satisfying. Like, it wraps up. Like, it's interesting to think about because they leave. None of the endings are really justified because they're based on a lot of information the audience couldn't possibly know. At least when you think of like solving a mystery book or movie.
Well,
because that's what allows them to have there be three endings.
Yeah. I almost feel like that was almost intentional. A, to kind of help them have three endings. But also, I mean, this is, a parody of murder mystery stories. And so, and the most iconic part of that murder mystery or any kind of mystery is the who did it and how they did it kind of revelation scene. And this is one of those things where, like, it's almost making fun of that by pulling information that the audience doesn't really have or perhaps couldn't quite have and being like, look how smart I am. So it's almost like making fun of that whole concept.
Yeah.
Of the many times that I've seen it, because I think I've seen it this is like the third time I've seen it within like 5 years or so. I have never once actually sat down and decided to go through it frame by frame to decide whenever he offers those explanations at the end. I've never actually gone back and looked at the scenes that they talk about.
Yeah, because if you watch the Miss Scarlet ending and the Miss Peacock ending, both times they're like, you're the one who wasn't there whenever we were in this room. But is that true about both of them? I didn't know. I hadn't noticed. So, but I think it probably holds up.
I mean, I'm sure it does. And this is, perhaps poor of us to not have a definitive answer at this point. But I thought the Miss Scarlet ending was the most boring, but
I feel like I kind of thought the ending I got when I watched the movie was the least satisfying. It felt very abrupt, the Miss Peacock ending. And I bet that it's the one that plays first.
No, Miss Scarlet plays first, then Miss Peacock, then the canon ending with all of them. That's probably an unofficial ranking of what the people making the DVD thought of them. I just really like the Miss Peacock one because I like it when she steps out and the FBI agent comes and is like, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, Miss Peacock. And then they all jump out.
Yeah. That guy had a tie that I was trying to find. I was like, I need this tie. The fake evangelist. Because it's like a tie that looks like it's a smaller tie. But it was impossible to Google, and I could not find it.
Really, I have to look. I'm gonna have to look it up because I wasn't paying attention to him, or his tie. I was looking more at the his pamphlet that he had.
Look up, Clue fake evangelist. I think that's what I searched, and I found him. And his tie is like a little smaller tie that looks like it's flying off to the side, but then it's actually a bigger tie. This is impossible to describe where anyone would get it unless they look it up. But
hold on, I'm watching a video. This is a very bizarre tie.
But isn't it the way I described it?
Yes.
It looks like he has a littler tie.
Yeah.
He kind of stunted on him.
I mean, if you're going to be an undercover evangelist, you might as well go all out.
I think I liked the Miss Scarlet ending because that's the ending. And it's hard to remember these all, which one had which. But that's the one where it ends with Colonel Mustard being shocked by the chandelier dropping again.
Mm-hmm.
I just liked that bit coming back. So,
well, that's also the only one where we have Wadsworth being like, "There's no bullets left in that gun. You've only got." They did the whole "it's 1 + 1 + 2 + 2 + 1" or whatever. I thought that was pretty funny. It almost like it feels like a Shakespeare kind of level of joke.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting to see that there's bits they wove throughout the entire movie that only 1/3 of audiences would ever see. Like, that's pretty strong dedication to each ending. Like, it's nice that they did at least make them all interweave correctly. Going back just through like stray thoughts I had as I watched the movie, I appreciated that the pattern of the hallway floor was just very large, distinct squares. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did notice that. It was one of those things I was like, well, they paid attention to the game.
Yeah, so that was like exactly how it would be in the game. Not a lot to say about it, but, I appreciated that it was there. Then the next thing that happened that I noticed was like the game, I guess, is when Tim Curry's butler is like, we're trying to figure out who killed him and where and with what. I just like that line.
Yeah, it kind of ties into like the canon ending is the only one where anyone comes out and directly says, it ends with Mr. Green saying, if you want to know who killed Mr. Body, it was me in the hall with the revolver.
Yeah.
And then he says,
that is a good point. That is another mark for it being the canon ending, is that happens.
And then he's like, I'm going to go have sex with my wife. Because we can't have a gay hero in a story in 1985.
Well, he was a murderer.
He was a cop. Okay, never mind. I retract my contention.
One thing I thought was like, the movie spends a solid chunk of time on it, and it's pretty obscure, I feel like, is when they split up into pairs after drawing lots. I think every single pair, or if not every single pair, like most of them, has a scene where they're like, we need to get in there. You go first. No, I'll go. And then they like try to squeeze in at the same time, and it's really difficult. Which is a reference, I think, to the rule that you can block people from entering a room in the board game.
I don't know if I could be as confident with you as you and say that it's like based off the rule, or so much that it was like, this is a funny thing to have in this comedy where like, aha, they're all chicken. None of them want to go first.
But like the fact that every single couple has this problem and it's at the doorways, it just felt too coincidental. It felt like they were digging through the rule book, looking for anything else they could put in the script. And the fact that if someone's in front of a doorway, it blocks anyone else from getting in, even though that doesn't really make that much sense, like, is what struck their imagination writing the script.
I mean, I'm willing to give it to you. I'm not that attached to, fighting you on it. I was kind of, to me, them going through the house was like almost like the most boring part of the film for me, because
and I feel like it's one of the like iconic things people remember about it because it is so directly lifted from the game. So what's boring? Like, what bored you about it?
I don't know, and it's maybe because I've seen it before, but like the fact that like, and I guess they do discover things about the house, and the fact that like, and they discover clues that like one room's connected to another, but it feels like that whole, anytime they go off, like it's not really there to kind of further them solving the mystery to me. And I know I'm kind of contradicting myself by saying they just discovered some clues about the house, but like, it felt like a pointless endeavor.
Yeah. I guess the part where I feel that way is the end, where he's starting to wrap up the mystery, and he just summarizes the events of the movie so far. But the only real joke that happens is just Tim Curry's performance as kind of, he's just being clownish, I guess, and running around. But he pretty much just straight recaps the movie you just watched over the last hour.
Well, see,
So it was a little...
To me, that part is carried by the fact that it's like a parody of all the other, who did it and how did they do it kind of scenes that you see in like any kind of Sherlock adaptation or any kind of, any
just like mystery movies
any,
in general.
Any mystery movie in general, where like they do the same thing, but they do it in less time. They like shorten how long he's speaking so that like in universe he'd explained it for a period of time, but like the audience only sees it for like 5 minutes or so. Whereas in this one, like, it forces us to sit through the entire thing to kind of see how absurd it is to kind of do this. Because they have that kind of joke where they're like, well, to make a long story short, and then everyone else is like, too late. And that's only like halfway through like the actual recounting of events.
Right. Yeah. But I guess it was like, it didn't actually help explain anything the characters didn't already know, which normally those scenes do, which again can be part of the parody, but it was wearing a little thin by the time the characters themselves were saying too late. I was like, yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about like the board game doesn't really kind of offer any kind of explanation of who did it and how did they do it. Like, I mean, it does, but like, you don't get any sense of like, why did the murder take place, which this movie kind of focuses on like quite heavily.
The murder in the board game is not even though the board game itself is like kind of a parody of mysteries, the murder in the board game, at least as far as we get any details about it, isn't a cover-up with like all these clever distractions and red herrings. It's just this object was used in this room, But
because I feel like the majority of this film was them trying to decide, okay, what's the motive that people have behind it? But that's never like a factor in like a Clue game. Like no one cares about motive.
Yeah. Does that affect it as an adaptation of Clue the board game?
Well, I don't see how you can make a movie
and not focus on the motive.
And not focus on the motive. Like for a board game, it makes sense because there's not a whole lot of narrative in a board game. Or at
Depends
least
on the game, but yeah.
There's not a whole lot of narrative in the Clue, the board game. But if you're going to turn it into something that's explicitly very much a narrative, you're going to have that's like character driven. You're going to have motivations.
This was kind of the first note I took, but I hadn't mentioned it yet, but it goes back to it, is that the fact that every character is like under an assumed alias and really there for like these different complex reasons. I understand why that was the easiest way to make it into a movie murder mystery, but I am a little sad that the characters aren't just like happen to be named after colors with like semi-relevant jobs to their names. I just think that would have been like, I think that would have also been kind of funny or campy if they had done it that way.
Well,
I mean, would have been the way I would have done it.
Almost feels like perhaps it's a little bit too much of a
too cartoonish.
Like no audience would take it seriously or whatever. Although I don't think any audience would actually care.
Right. Yeah. And it does help them set up the mystery they end up going with and its solutions. So I think we're kind of getting through to the end of the movie. Do you have any other notes on it?
I could just go over some jokes that I like.
Yeah, I can do the same thing.
Early on, Miss White says that her and her deceased husband had threatened to kill her in public, and then I believe it's Miss Scarlet who says, "Why would he threaten to kill her in public?" And then Mr. Wadsworth was like, "Well, actually, I think she means she threatened in public to kill him."
To kill him, yeah. When they go to dinner early on in the movie, and someone like quotes something
Is it?
Tennyson. They quote Tennyson. And then someone else is like, I would quote Kipling. The female of the species is much weaker than the male. Like,
I think
just
they
as
said,
like completely insane quote.
I thought it was much more deadly than the male.
Yeah, something like that. But it was just like the super scientific and sexist quote, whereas the person who quoted Tennyson, it was like super poetic. I thought that was funny. And it does come back to be relevant depending on the ending you get, I guess. But 2 of the 3, it's relevant.
I did like all the scenes where they have to like pick up the body and then they decide to just move them around to different parts of the house. Like, that one is just kind of a funny kind of scene to kind of just see where, like, you think they would just leave them there because, you know, why would you take them around? But they're like, let's go pile them up in the study.
This is not a joke, but so many of the like moments visually that I think were supposed to be funny are just like casual sexual assault. Did you notice this?
Yes. I wasn't...
Like, Professor Plum, Christopher Lloyd's character in particular, like his entire character is that he's super handsy.
Yeah, and he had sex with a patient, and it's just very much like, this is not a...
Which, like, him being debaucherous and having sex with a patient is not a problem for the movie, I guess. Like, that's fine, but so many like visual gags that you're clearly supposed to laugh at are like, Professor Plum put his hand on the dead woman's butt cheek, and Professor Plum tried to touch Miss White's butt, and so on.
So on and so forth. Well, I felt like...
Might be why... Yeah.
I felt like Miss Scarlet got a lot of those. Actually, I don't know why I'm going to say want to pick out Miss Scarlet in particular, but like all the women in general, like Yvette the maid, who like is a very interesting addition to this film because I don't really know why she's there.
I think it's because, like, I think they tried to include all the classic, like, it was actually this person who did it tropes. So they have the butler and the maid and the cook, because the origin of those is that those types of house staff never were the murderer in murder mysteries until it was subverted and people were actually shocked. Like, it was the butler who you never think of. And then they became cliche. And I think they tried to include all those types of roles.
That's fair.
Why they made her like super busty and her tits are bouncing all over the screen for
that
about
first
70% of the runtime. But
that first scene in particular, like when you first see her and they're just all over the place.
Well, you have to establish the character, Cameron.
I guess that's fair.
And that's her character.
That is true, probably.
She also has, the worst French accent ever heard. So that's the other half of her character. But
well, she's also like not even really a maid because she's like works for Miss Scarlet as like a prostitute. And so it's like her doing a bad like French maid performance kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's weird that she would be doing the performance the entire time for just these random house guests that aren't hiring her. But it does at least explain why she's in this like super cleavagey costume.
I liked when Wadsworth was trying to get into the room and he opens the door and he steps in. He's like, it ends up being the bathroom and he ends up turning the shower in on himself. That was funny.
Yeah, it was. Another note that I didn't bring up earlier, they put a lot of emphasis on like things being locked and like throwing away keys. Like, it happens at least with when they lock up the weapons and when they lock the house itself, which is not a feature of the game. So I wasn't sure. I mean, I guess they just felt the need to make sure there weren't any leaks in the story.
Well, I think you also have to like have a justification for why they all have to stay there for like at least a little bit.
But I feel like if I were at a home where a murder occurred and I was a prime suspect by virtue of being there, I would probably be motivated to stick around and figure it out before I left and possibly got saddled with it.
I mean, I do think they eventually kind of worked there, worked their way to that point. But early on, they all kind of want to leave. And Mr. Green kind of wants to leave the entire time because he constantly says he didn't do it. As we see in the canon ending, he's a cop. I do like that they brought communism as a red herring into all the endings. I thought that was funny. Which is something that you only notice if you watch
True Comrades wrote this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Communism as a political force or a political fear is only ever a red herring.
I mean, it does tie into Wadsworth's backstory where his wife was brought before the Fine Communist Committee, whose name I forget at the moment.
Yeah, the House Un-American Activities Committee. HWAC.
Mm-hmm.
Last joke I think I wrote down, because I didn't write every joke I thought was funny down, was one of the women characters, I guess, probably Miss White, is talking about one of her ex-husbands, and she's like, he was an illusionist. And then they're like, well, why didn't he reappear? Well, he wasn't a very good illusionist. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I think this film is very good for, fun one-liners.
Yeah.
Communism is a red herring. He wasn't a very good illusionist. The whole flames down my face, flames burning.
Yeah.
Also,
Which again...
Was it the Cantonese monkey brains, while a very delectable dish, is not common in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah. He says that in, I think, 2 of the endings.
I just think 2 of them.
Maybe it's just the Miss Peacock one.
It's odd to me because they definitely mention early on in the film that they're eating shark fin soup.
Yeah, so... Which again points to maybe the Miss Peacock ending did not get as much attention as the others.
Well, she's I guess there's another dish that she's eating that's just by herself while everyone else kind of stares at her. But
yeah, it is weird. Are we ready to kind of rate the movie, or do you have any stray notes?
I think that covers all the notes that are kind of worth talking about from what I've looked at.
I think I went first on the rating last time, so I'll let you rate this one first.
So I'd probably have to say, in terms of trying to adapt this has to be the most difficult thing to adapt, right? In terms of just well, I can't think of anything.
I don't think it's both difficult and not, I think, because on a basic level, Clue, the board game, is already a parody of murder mysteries. So if you just make a funny murder mystery, you're halfway there. Except that wouldn't really feel like Clue, if you just slapped the Clue name on it. Trying to adapt the rules of a board game in an amusing way to a feature-length movie is what pushes it up, I guess. But I think of all the board games you could try to make movies of, I think this would be one of the easier ones.
Maybe.
Do you think Sorry, the movie, would be easier to make than Clue?
Well, I think that there are things that are impossible to adapt, in my mind. So, Sorry would be a movie would be something that's impossible to adapt to a film, in my mind.
It would just be, Speed Racer-esque, just an explosion of lights and colors.
I thought we were only going to talk about high art in this film, in high art films, but...
Well, the Speed Racer community is going to get after you for that.
I like Speed Racer. I just don't think that if you made a Sorry Speed Racer-esque, a Sorry movie that's kind of basically like Speed Racer, I don't think it would be very good.
Do you know that, meme that's just make a grizzled movie about an old man, and watch it rake in the box office, like Christopher Nolan direct. Have you ever seen that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just make a grizzled movie about a red pond that doesn't take anyone's shit anymore, going down the home stretch, and let Christopher Nolan direct and rake in the box office with Sorry.
The pawn has lost his daughter and or dog at the beginning of the film. Now nothing holds him back.
Well, except for when, a pawn of a different color ends up on the same space as him.
Yeah.
Which is like the climactic moment. He hits the boost zone where you can like go like 5 spaces because you landed on a lucky space, and very next turn he gets hit by that green pawn.
I think I'd really like to see
home.
Christopher Nolan direct a movie adaptation of Mario Party.
See, but that Mario Party puts its thumb on the scale with, it times out dramatic turns of event and emotional backlash. So I think it is more readily adapted.
Well, yeah. I just think it'd be an interesting kind of film, I think.
The rights are currently like held, and it's been in production limbo forever for a Settlers of Catan movie.
See, now that one doesn't sound like that's too difficult to like make work as a film.
Have you played Catan?
I think I played one time.
It's not very narrative, is all I would say. Clue is more narrative for sure.
I just feel like there's something about how like Clue is almost narrative enough where like you have these like guardrails you have to kind of stay with inside to like for it to remain recognizably Clue, whereas with Settlers of Catan you have more freedom.
That's true. But I feel like I would give this on our rating scale, I would probably call it a Mario, but it sounds like you're thinking Donkey Kong.
I would have to think Donkey Kong. I mean, I just think if you talk to any random person and you're like, okay, here's an adaptation of a board game, everyone's going to be like, well, how does that work?
But I think if the board game has an obvious thing, an obvious narrative that it's based on, people will be like, well, it's a little weird to make an adaptation of a board game because those don't have plots, but they'll get it. I mean, like the Battleship movie, like, obviously it's weird to make a movie of Battleship, but people understand, well, it's probably about battleships shooting at each other, and it is.
Okay, I think you've convinced me. I'll go down to Mario.
So we're going...
I'll go down on Mario.
I mean, you can keep it Donkey Kong, but...
No, I'll admit when
we don't have to form a consensus.
But we didn't reach a consensus last episode. I'll admit when I'm wrong this time. This one and only time in the history of the world.
I just think, even within the realm of turning a board game into a movie, I can think of obvious examples that would be more difficult than Clue, even though I think it is impressive enough to adapt Clue.
Such as?
I mean, chess, Sorry, like we already said.
Well, chess is just a war game, so you just make a war movie.
I mean, I think Monopoly would probably even be harder, but it has a little more obvious of a hook. Plenty of modern board games. Carcassonne, Ticket to Ride. Anyway, that's just me listing the names of board games so we can move on.
You can list. I think you can list at least 17 more.
I could. I'm not going to. So now that we've established, I guess you didn't have to agree with me, but we've established it's a Mario difficulty. Where does Clue fall for you on beating it or not?
Taking in everything and, understand that I don't much care for Clue, the board game, that I'm going to say that to me, this is a much more enjoyable experience and much more kind of what I look for in terms of, entertainment. I'm probably going to say this completes the board game.
Yeah. I think I have to agree. I think I'm a little more... I'm not negative on it. I think it's a good movie. But I think the way it adapts the board game... Like I said, they could have just made a murder mystery with some jokes in it and called it a day, and it would have been pretty close to being an adaptation of Clue, the board game. But they went above and beyond to, randomize the ending the same way you randomize who did the murder in the board game. And they have all the scenes of running around to each room, which is, the thing you do in the board game. And depending on whether you believe me or not, when I say that the scenes about squeezing into tight spaces are based on the movement rules, and they have the secret passages, and like just at every step, I mean, it feels like they read the rule book and made sure that just about every rule that you see in there is in the movie, which is impressive to me. So I would agree with it completes it.
Okay. Mario has reached completion. That could be the title of this episode.
Finally, after 3 episodes.
I mean, that's a long time.
All waiting. He was waiting a long time to reach completion.
You just don't want to be around when Donkey Kong reaches completion.
Yeah, that might take a while still. All right, so are we a wrap on Clue?
I think we're a wrap on Clue. This murder mystery has been solved.
All right. Well, just to let everyone know out there, next episode we will be covering Little Women, the classic novel by Louisa May Alcott. There are several movie adaptations, and we may bring up any of them briefly, but we will be focusing on the 2019 adaptation directed by Greta Gerwig. So if you're wanting to follow along, you'll want Little Women by Louisa May Alcott and Little Women 2019 by Greta Gerwig is what we'll cover next.
Well, that's all we got. As always, we want to give credit to those that made this podcast possible, to those that worked on the adaptation, to those that worked on the original work. A great big thanks for making the world just a little bit more artful. And as he mentioned, Little Women is what we're going to aim for next week. Or next time, I should say. But thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And see you real soon.